you have a problem. You're not going to be any more than what you're doing right now. And he couldn't believe that I said that to him because he's a multimillionaire and who would dare tell him what to do? And I said, I'm not like any other coach. You're going to do what I tell you to do or we're not having a business at all. I've never been in front of something like this before. And he threw his credit card at me, 20 grand. And I'm thinking, what just happened? Right? So all three of them hired me on the spot. Two of them for the past 8 years or 9 years are making between $300,000 and $400,000 a year easily. One of them made 1.2 million in 2017.
Orly, thank you so much for joining us today on Launchpad for Coaches. And I'd love to start out by just hearing, who are you and what is your business?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Orly Amor. I am a business coach for public speakers and entrepreneurs, and the only one in the world that guarantees they'll make $150K in the first year of public speaking and writing, or I work with them until they do.
Love
That's
that.
where I am. That's really
love that. Thank you. So how did you get started in this business?
I love that question is so amazing to me. I actually was in business doing property management for many, many years, and I wrote a couple of books on the subject matter, and a lot of amazing things happened to me. But one day, one of my girlfriends asked me to speak at this women's shelter. And I said, what do you want me to speak about? Property management? And she said, no, silly. I want you to come and tell your story. And I said, oh, no, that's not going to happen. So unlike many, or as many don't like to tell their story because of being shamed or criticized or judged, whatever that may be. And so I was really afraid of talking. So I was already a public speaker, but in the world of property management. And I said, no, I'm not going to do this. So how many of you have an annoying friend? I'm sure you'll relate. I had she was super annoying. She called me every single day for 3 weeks. And after 3 weeks, I said, okay, tell me why you want me. There's other people that speak on the subject matter. Why me? She said, well, you have this bubbly personality. Everywhere we go, people want to hug you. Even people who don't know you hug you. And you're such a social butterfly. You live a lifestyle that most people dream about. Just come and give these women hope. I said, okay, what do I have to do to get you off my phone? So I was really adamant about not telling my story. And so I relented after she said, yes, you have to say yes. So I had to. And a few weeks later, or I would say a few months later, because 2-3 months, I spoke at this women's shelter. And it is there that I met a woman that wanted to end her life. And she actually showed me a piece of paper. She said, you see here? That's not where I was going this morning. I was going to kill myself. This is how I was going to do it. And I don't even remember driving from my house to the shelter. And, but I heard you speak and I want to live. I just need you to show me how. Boo-hoo, Niagara Falls. I couldn't hold it together. And because you don't know my story, and that's why I decided to start coaching. It was there that I really decided, that was one of my pivotal moments in my life, that it's bigger than me, that it's more than just me. And property management was not going to last very long after that episode.
Sure. So that's incredible, first and foremost, Orly. How did you make the jump? Did you jump right in to coaching? Was it slow?
It's a great question because it kind of, so I was one of those Tony Robbins groupies, right? Like I did so much work. So my story is, I'll tell it to you in 13 seconds so I can keep that in context. I was a beaten up child. I was molested 4 times before the age of 14. I was raped 3 times before the age of 22, twice gang raped, 9 months apart, left for dead. And I was married to a very abusive husband, both mentally and physically. And so as a result of that, I had gained a morbid amount of weight and I had 4 abortions. So when people ask me that question, was it a good jump? It was because it was a process of first taking care of me, not being the victim and being the victor. I've heard it so much before. You got to go from victim to victor, blah, blah, blah. But the mindset part is so important. And not only did I follow Tony Robbins, I followed the Deepak Chopras of the Steve Coveys of the world. I read over 600 books. It was just one of those things where I decided to create even my own program. I created my program, and I also showed it to one of my mentors. And he said, if you came here for my blessing, you have my blessing. Great. And I put it on the shelf. How many of us have done amazing work and we put it on the shelf to collect dust? And that's what I did because I wasn't ready emotionally, physically. I just didn't know how to go about it. But then I realized that it was much bigger than me. So I had to get that program going. And and it's an Orly thing, just so you guys know. Not everybody might have the courage to do this, but courage does pay off. I decided to be a business coach for CEOs and CFOs of Fortune 500 and Fortune 100 companies. And my first deal was where I didn't know how to explain what I do because it was not about business. It was more about mindset. So my first client said, well, I don't understand what you do. Tell me what you do. I said, I don't even know how to tell you what I do. Can I show you what I do? He said, meet me at my office at 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning. I'll have my secretary there. We're doing some work, but come. So I went and I started showing him and I told him to write something down and everything. He's like, I've never been in front of something like this before. And he threw his credit card at me, 20 grand. And I'm thinking, what just happened, right? It was one of those things where you have that doubt in yourself, but then you also know that you're good at what you do. And it's that fine line of deciding, is this for me? So when that thing happened at the shelter, it was like this is more than me. This is much bigger than me. And it is there also that I decided that I should share my story. There is a reason why to share your story. In the act of sharing, there's contribution. You just don't know whose life you're going to change. So when I was going after those CEOs and CFOs, and he hired me, he was my first one, and he started referring business my way. But and he also walked me down the aisle at my wedding. So this is, so my second wedding. So a lot has happened because of that courage part. And I called myself the checkup from the neck up, like the consigliere for CEOs. It was a cute way to go about it.
Orly, the very first time I ever saw you speak and tell your story, it was so clear that you are someone who is comfortable being vulnerable and sharing these things. And I think that's one of those things that really stands out to people who need you and who need to learn to be vulnerable. And thank you for being vulnerable with us and with our listeners and our audience here. I think a lot of people, like you're talking about, they're afraid to share their story. They're especially afraid to share the scary parts, the bad parts, the confusing parts. And when they're building their coaching businesses, they get kind of wrapped up in the how instead of the why. And it sounds like you were developing yourself along with your business and having your why. I mean, having saved someone's life in your very first talk is like a pretty big why, right? Like that will keep you centered when you're having a rough day, like imposter syndrome, like that kind of thing.
Right.
For sure.
Right. For sure.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, because you brought up something really, really important. And I didn't know I was doing it, but I was doing it. So recently I was introduced to a book it's by Dan Sullivan. It's called The Who Not How. And it's such an amazing book. And I said, oh my God, I do some of this. And you know what? I need to do more of it because we always want the next step or the next stuff for our business. But before we do that, what I realized also is that we have to go through the trenches. We do have to go through our own alignment with what we do and believe that what we're doing is for the greater good, because we will make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. And those who are thinking that there's a perfect way of doing anything are really sadly mistaken, right? There is no perfect way of doing anything. Even the millionaires and billionaires will tell you the same thing. They will tell you it wasn't an overnight success. Right? Yeah.
So how did you initially choose the first client that you worked with, like, hey, I'm going to work with CEOs? How
I
did you
didn't.
choose?
I just announced it.
You
You
just
see,
announced it.
that's what keeps happening to me. I don't, maybe I am attracting that, but um, it's kind of funny, but it really is like that. It just falls on my lap. But this is where opportunity comes in, right? Sir Richard Brunson, I live by this mantra. Sir Richard Brunson says, when an opportunity knocks, say yes, figure it out later. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I had the validation from my mentor to do it, and I still didn't take action. So first of all, action rewards. There is rewards in taking action. Let's just put it that way. But the other part of that is not knowing what the heck I was doing. Like, this is exactly what keeps happening to me, is that I don't know what I'm doing. I announce it to the universe. Literally, that's how I attracted my husband now of 12 years. It's exactly the same thing. I just wrote it down. This is what I want. And writing it down does matter. I have manifested the money I make. I manifested the clients. I manifested my next steps, everything, even my husband. Like, who knew I was going to walk to a coffee shop middle of New York and meet my husband? Who knew? Literally. That's what happened. And so when we're going into business, especially in coaching, we gotta just get over the hump of the imposter syndrome. Am I good enough? Listen, no matter where you are at, and I'm talking to your audience, no matter where you're at right now, you are better off than somebody that's just starting out. If you're an hour into your business, somebody started in their first minute. So you're already ahead of the game and you can help somebody. Just know that it's bigger than you.
Orly, I love what you said about saying yes and figuring it out. Um, I I'm also curious on the other side, because a lot of times I give people the guidance to start saying no, where they're saying yes to too many things that don't actually support what they're up to. Do you have some sort of guiding principle that you use when it's like, do I say yes? Because you're getting, I'm sure at this point in your career, just thing after thing after thing, opportunity, opportunity. And at a certain point, and I'm sure in the same vein as like Tony Robbins, being able to say, hey, not every opportunity is the right opportunity for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So there's a couple of things here. One is boundaries. People don't have any boundaries, so they say yes to everything because they just want to see if spaghetti, you throw it on the wall, if it sticks, it's a good thing. But it's not true, because it needs to be aligned with your core values. My core values are integrity, community, and service. So those are my three top. Like, I have other core values that I live by, but those are my three top. And if it's not in alignment with my core values, then I don't really want to do it. And also, think about it. The things that you said yes to that were kind of haphazardous and you didn't really think it through, you didn't do it full out. You didn't play the game. And if you don't play the game and you don't want to play it full out, then you're going to lose and you're going to see it as a failure. It's not failure. It's just a lesson learned. Now you learned what you should not be doing. It's like, now you learned what doesn't work for you. And sometimes people take too long to learn those lessons. That's where the curve is so long. If they just sit with themselves and say, this is what I really, really want. See, most people know what they don't want. If you tell them, okay, what kind of guy do you want to date? Well, I don't want a smoker. I don't want a guy who has children. I don't want, like, you hear everything they don't want. Okay, but tell me what you want. See, when I wrote a letter to the universe about my husband, current husband, it was like, I want to meet somebody that loves what I do. That also, if he doesn't love what I do, at least he supports me in what I do. That we have fun together, that we like to travel together, that we like to do things together. You know, we can complement it, not complete each other, complement each other. There's a lot of nuances that people are using, not knowing what they're doing. So I would say, sit down with yourself, have a talk. It's me, myself, and I. We have that meeting all the time. Me, myself, and I have a huge meeting. And we actually say the truth to each other. Do I like this? Do I, and to your point, Morgan, do I want it or do I need it? Sometimes things that we say yes to are things that we just want. It's instant gratification. It's that kind of thing. But what we need, it might not be in alignment. So we need to say no to it. And I agree with what you said about saying no. There are, what do you call it? I called it earlier. There are boundaries to that too.
So, Orly, how did you jump into building a program around that first experience? Like, well, how did you do that?
That I didn't want to be a victim anymore.
Uh-huh.
You have to make that decision for yourself. Do I want to give excuses or do? So I read a lot of books and I got many ideas from these books. And then I created the kind of language we need to speak. This is way before I even heard about neuro-linguistic programming, right? I mean, NLP, I think it's Tony Robbins that started that or somebody else. And I never even knew about it until 10 years after I started. So it was kind of weird for me to see things come up. And now it's the whole world, right? But how did I know to write a program? I didn't. I had my mentor challenge me. I had followed Tony Robbins around the world. And I mean, I spent over $250,000 just on Tony Robbins. I mean, if we're going to talk about everything else I spend money on, boy, we'll be here all day. But after being in San Diego at a Tony Robbins event, I met a lot of great people, and you always meet amazing people at these events because they're kind of like-minded. They're always looking for the next thing. And 10 days later, I was in Paris, France at a Tony Robbins event. And I walk into the auditorium and I see the same people I met in San Diego. And now this is after following him for a long time. And now I'm thinking, and excuse, I'm not going to say the language I used, but what the heck are they doing here? And the second question after that was, what the heck are you doing here? Didn't you get the memo? Like, have you not had enough of learning? And so when I met with my mentor back from that trip, he said, so how's it going? And I said, well, you know what? I've been traveling the world, meeting people, going through these programs, and something is missing. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to find out. And he kind of made fun of me, like condescendingly. He said, okay, dear, when you do, call me, right? And I'm thinking, oh, you're on. It's on. Don't ever challenge Orly because she's going to take it to the next level. And that made me sit down with myself and say, okay, how did I make it through? Because I don't even remember. What was the decision? How does my brain work? And what happened to me traumatically? And what happened to me in my own storytelling in my brain? Because sometimes we like to call ourselves the victim and the excuses that come from, because my parents didn't show me how to save money. Oh, because my parents didn't save money. Oh, my parents didn't leave me any money. Like everybody has these stories they tell themselves where everything they need, they have already, right? Inside themselves. And so that's how I decided to write that program, to walk somebody through the actual step-by-step getting to out of their circumstances immediately. And literally within the first session, they're completely changed. It's pretty cool.
So you started off purely with one-on-ones? Did you eventually grow that into a big group? How did you
I started with one-on-ones. And for
Yeah.
10 years, I was coaching CEOs and CFOs of big companies and so on. And after that, I got so bored. Now, I have to say the truth here, right? I got bored of listening to their ramping up, talking about their problems. I got bored, okay? And as coaches, we get bored. We get bored because it's the same old, just a different person, just a different, mentality, just a different scenario, but it's the same thing. So I decided to stop doing that and certify coaches in my program. It was so much fun and so much better because the coaches need coaches. Don't ever hire a coach that doesn't have a coach. And if you don't have a coach, then you don't know how to coach. It's very simple, right? Everybody wakes up in the morning and say, oh, I'm a coach or I'm a public speaker, right? And they don't know what's the first step to do. So my program actually gives them the step-by-step and the how-to in front. But they need to go through the program in order to be able to teach it. So their transformation is also up-leveled. And now they can show people how to go through the mud. That's what happened.
I think we're on a streak, Morgan. Every coach we've interviewed is like, do not trust coaches without coaches.
Well, it's true. And we say the same thing too.
Yeah. Well, because, well, it's very simple. And there's a reason why we say that. How can somebody coach me if they haven't been through some kind of also coaching? The value of coaching is that we shorten the learning curve. So that's our goal. That's our job. Our job is to shorten the learning curve of our clients. But if they're not going through it, so they'll read all the books and watch all the YouTube videos, and then they're going to call themselves a coach. That's also scary because they never had practical approach to what they're teaching. And also no proof in the pudding, meaning does it work? So that's why we need coaches, and coaches need coaches. I have coaches. I've always done, but in some aspect of my life. And if you don't know you need a coach, then you really need a coach. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah.
I think, when you were talking about that first CEO that you coached, and, that at the time you were having some trouble describing how you do what you do and what it is you do. I think there's something really special about showing them, right? Because there are a lot of like charlatan coaches out there who have just watched some Tony Robbins and decided they're going to be a coach and they never actually did it. That's a complaint I see a lot from people who have never done coaching. They're like, oh, it's a scam. It's these people, it's a multi-level marketing. It's all this stuff. But when you actually get in the room with them and show them, they can see the value of coaching. So what is it you showed that guy? Like, how did you demonstrate what you do to have him throw his credit card at you?
I told him to write the following 12 words. I basically just said, put number 1 to 12 and put it on a piece of paper. And I said, on the first number, you're going to write, I can't. On the second one, you're going to write, I'll try. On the third one, you're going to write, I will. And then I went down and the problem, shoulda, coulda, woulda, all of those, never, always. Those are the last 12 in the 12. And I said to him, how many times do you say any of those? He goes, I say all of them, all the time. I go, we got a problem. You have a problem. You're not going to be any more than what you're doing right now. And he couldn't believe that I said that to him because he's a multimillionaire. And who would dare tell him what to do? And I said, I'm not like any other coach. You're going to do what I tell you to do, or we're not having a business at all. Not only that, when after he hired me, this happens to me all the time with those people. After he hired me, he's like, I'm thinking of firing the president of the company, but the president of the company is actually my brother. He's like, when my mother passed away, I took a dive and I was kind of MIA for a few months, and he held the fort and blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking of firing him. And I said, you're not going to fire him. If anything, he's going to fire you. He goes, but I'm the bigger earner. And I said, well, that means nothing. He just doesn't trust you. And he said, what? And I said, that's right. Now, here's what you're going to do. You're going to have lunch with him next week. And you're going to actually tell him that you're sorry for not being there, for leaving him hanging, for him holding the fort. You're going to thank him, and you're going to assure him that this will never happen again, no matter what happens in both of your lives. Even in the video at my wedding, he said, you saved my life and my family's life. This is the things that were very important to me, is that these guys who are super rich, super successful, high earners, all of that, the problem with them is that they don't have anybody to talk to. First, they don't want to go to a therapist or a psychologist because that will be in their record. 2, they can't talk to their spouses about it because they don't want to burden the spouse or put any extra stress on anyone else that they love. Then they don't want to talk to their friends because on the golf course, who would talk that? We'll talk business. We make money, It's more on the upfront and keeping up the appearances. And they can't talk to their downline because they don't want to stress them out for the anxiety they're suffering. So that's why I called myself the checkup from the neck up, because I was able to literally sit them down and say, no, it's not. There is a no. Everybody else yeses you. I'm not going to yes you. And he loved that. And so that gave me the confidence more and more. As I was working with him, he referred me to his clients. He referred me to other people. And everybody was like, oh my God, change, 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 confirmation, confirmation. So that's how I really, yeah, that's what I said to him. That's what I showed him. I told him to write it down. And I said, you have a problem.
I need to do that.
What?
I need to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Orly, eventually you built programs for coaches. Did you start off by doing masterminds? Did you build groups? Walk me through your process of building a more scalable coaching business.
So first of all, what I did was that once I started certifying coaches in the Mindset Mastery, I really I fell in love with public speaking. So the fact that I was speaking at this shelter and so on, I really fell in love with it. I saw people come to me and say, oh my God, you really changed my life. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for coming, all of that. And I said, wow, this is so cool. I wonder how to do this. And I went to see other speakers and I was thinking, oh, wow, if they do it, I can do it. And then I decided to hire a coach. And so I had to convince him because he didn't coach anyone. He's like, I don't do coaching. I'm like, oh, no, you're going to coach me on the public speaking side. And he's like, I don't do that, Orly. I said, oh, yes, you will. His name is Victor Gonzalez. And I said, Victor, you're going to coach me. And he's like, no, I don't do. I said, how much? He's like, Orly, it's not about the money. I don't coach anybody. I'm like, oh, no, you're going to take me under your wing. That's what it's going to cost. Whatever it costs, just tell me. And I paid him. He accepted that. And he's like, I said, whatever you tell me to do, I'm going to jump higher. Like literally, whatever you tell me. 1 foot, I'll do 2. And I will not negate and I will not be the excuser, right? Like a lot of coaching clients will say, well, I didn't have time to do the homework, or I didn't, my son was sick, or my daughter got married, or whatever. It's always something. And I told him that I will not do that. And so he told me, listen to this, this is hysterical. He told me to join Toastmasters, but I didn't know what that was. So he said, I want you to go to a meeting of Toastmasters. And I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. I will not sell toasters for a living. There is no way in hell that I am going to this MLM that sells toasters. And he cracked up just like you are. And I am being serious because then he said, Orly, what are you talking about? And I said, I'm not selling toasters. I'm not going to meetings with MLMs, blah, blah, blah. Is that like a Tupperware thing? This is exactly what, because everybody that said meeting, ding, 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 it was one of those trigger words. He's like, Orly, Toastmasters is about speaking. And I want you to go to at least the first 10 meetings. You're going to do the first 10 speeches, and then you're going to get out. Although I continued going because I loved it with so many friends that I made and so on. But I fell in love with the whole art of public speaking. And then I said, okay, well, how do I get paid now? Like this should be a monetizable business. And so I learned by myself. I worked so hard to call event planners and get the no, 110,000 no's before I got my first gig. But later on in life, after I had done quite a bit and I have been to like 28 countries and 18 states of the United States speaking. And I loved it. I really did. But I didn't do any kind of coaching. I just spoke and I loved it. I got certified as a behavior analyst. I got my train the trainer in DISC. I basically wanted to teach people how to close the deal 98% of the times for profiling and how to network while profiling others. Like making sure that you don't waste your time, right? The naysayers, the ones who just won't make a decision. I can't deal with those. I'm a very, very high DI. And so, no, that was not going to work for me. And eventually, I did a party at my house, just a pool party with a bunch of friends who are speakers. And I was hearing them talk about how they're not making money. And I was wondering, like, what do you mean you're not making money? It's a big industry. And they're saying, I said, minimum wage is $150,000 a year. And they're like, are you crazy, Orly? Like, some of us make 60, some of us 80, 100, that's pushing it 150. You're out of your freaking mind. There's no way, right? And in my head, I said, okay, well, no, first I said to them, you do you, I'll do me. They hate when I say that, okay? Because that's one of the. But in my head, I was thinking, well, thank God I didn't tell them that I tripled that. Because in my head, there was a cartoon playing saying, okay, they're going to drown me in my pool, take over the house, take over the dog. Oh, no, we don't want that. Right? So I was not going to tell how much money I make. So right after that, I was traveling in Europe for 7 countries where from there, I went to Arlington, Texas. That's my Arlington, Texas story because, again, pivotal moment where I decided to actually get into the business of coaching speakers. But what happened to me was that I was in the break room for speakers and 3 guys came over to me and one of them said, "Aren't you Orly Amor?" I said, "Yeah, do I know you? Sorry, don't remember." And now that you know my story, it was pretty creepy, like all 3 of them coming towards me. And so I said, "Do I know you?" They said, "No, we've never met before, but we've seen you on the circuit." I'm like, "Okay, sounds good." And in my head also was another thing playing because I don't remember how many circuits I've been on, but I know that I've been in the corporate circuit for a very long time, right? And so we're starting to network as usual. Those things, conversations take off. And at one point, one of them says to me, "I'm just curious, how did you get this gig?" I said, "I don't know. I called, I told them what I speak about. They paid me and I'm here." They all looked at me like if I had 3 heads. "You got paid?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, what did I just do?" "You guys didn't?" They're like, "No, we got our expenses paid, but we didn't get paid." I said, "Oh no, I got paid and I got my expenses paid." Now, what you guys need to know also why I say things just fall in my lap. Until that moment, I did not know that speakers did not get paid. I did not know about pay to play. I didn't know about speak to for free. I didn't know about speak to sell. I never even heard the terminology. This is May of 2010. Okay, and I'm thinking, holy mackerel, what is going on? So I went to the event planner because I felt really shitty. I went to the, sorry, no filter between my brain and my mouth. I went to the event planner and I said, "Listen, I think I just screwed up real bad. I just told these 3 guys that I got paid to be here and they didn't." And she said, "Yes, you're the only one who got paid. 60 speakers, I'm the only one who got paid. Well, give or take a few." And I said, "Why?" She's like, "Well, they didn't ask." And I'm like, "What?" Right? So again, asking is a big deal, which was a revelation to me. So I went home thinking, holy crap, these guys did not get paid. My friends are complaining not getting paid. There must be something to this. So I went home thinking I had the magical formula, which I started writing things down. And I realized that it's just a system, consistency, systems, relationships, how to build them. And I started interviewing coaches, not coaches, event planners for my book. And it took me a long time because in the beginning, I just interviewed here and there and I just kept it as, again, something that took the shelf and got some dust on it. That was that. And I didn't take it on again for a while. And then I went right into it. But this is where I discovered that I'm going to coach speakers. But I didn't know how I was going to do it. So I created the program, just created it, didn't know what. But I called back those 3 guys that I met in Arlington, Texas, and I said, "Listen, I don't know what I'm doing. You can't make this up." I said, "I don't know what I'm doing, but I created a program that's going to guarantee you'll make $150K your first year in public speaking, or I work with you until you do." And they said, "Well, nobody guarantees that. How do you guarantee anything?" And I said, "Oh, that's a good question. Well, if I get you a job at McDonald's anywhere USA, can I guarantee they'll pay you 150? Minimum wage? Can I guarantee they'll pay you minimum wage?" And they said, "Yeah, it's the law." All right. And I said, "Great. So 150K in public speaking is actually minimum wage. We make a lot more than that. So I can guarantee you minimum wage. Easy." So all 3 of them hired me on the spot. 2 of them for the past 8 years or 9 years are making between $300,000 and $400,000 a year easily. One of them made 1.2 million in 2017. So I realized from that alone that there was something to this. And that's where everything just took off. One told the other and the other. And then my name got known in the business of public speaking that I'm still the only one, 14 years later, the only one who guarantees they'll make the 150K in writing.
That's insane. So
What's
today,
insane? Hold on a second. I know
no,
you're
no,
the
no,
interviewer,
the
but
entire story, you know, just asking to get paid. People aren't asking to get paid.
right.
The entire thing from start to finish is insane to me. So today, most of your business comes from referral.
Networking, referrals. And in 2018, one of my friends said, you should do webinars. And I'm like, what is webinars? Like, these are the things that I'm so behind the eight ball and I still make it happen. I'm telling you, I have too many stories on this, but I said, what is a webinar? Well, we're going to do a Zoom and blah, blah, blah. And here's how we're going to do it. And I said, okay, sure, we'll do that. And you're going to do one every 2 weeks. Okay, but how are we going to promote that? And I said, okay, I think I know. I'm going to put it on Eventbrite. And like, yeah, sure. Put it on Eventbrite. Invite people. Okay, I'll invite people. I'll give them a link. Okay, I give them a link. And this is like how I learned little things, right? So funny that in 2020, after the pandemic hit, right? And I had just published my book, Public Speakers, You're Not All That, 12 Reasons Why Event Planners Won't Hire You. I interviewed over 3,400 event planners for that book. And it took me 4.5 years actually to commit to it and get it done. And I published it in December 12, 2019. And wouldn't we all want to have known about buying stocks with Zoom at that time? Like I would have wanted to. But anyway, so what happened in 2020, the pandemic hit, and all my clients were complaining that nobody is returning their calls, blah, blah, blah. I said, guys, listen, there are 64,000 events a day in America alone that pay speakers. Canada and the United States, that's it. They did not just vanish. Here's what happened. And this is the importance also for coaches to know the industry they're in. You gotta know what lane you're playing in. And I really studied this industry of public speaking. Many, many people teach because they read a book. I don't read a book. I study the book. I go all the way in. For any intricacy that I didn't miss, I'm going to go and read it again and again and again. So when people tell me, I read books all the time, I'm like, yeah, did you read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill? They're like, oh my God, I totally read it. And then they come back and ask me a question. Why did you decide to impact the lives of 200 million around the planet by 2025? Which was my goal from 2010. And I'm like, did you really read that book by Napoleon Hill? Because it seems to me that you missed a story in there. And there's a story in there by Gandhi that tells the story that he actually got 200 million people to follow him harmoniously for the fight against hunger and violence in India. And he did it without the internet. I think I could do it by 2025 by myself. And we reached it in last November, 2024. So the goal is having a goal. And if you don't have a big enough goal, now I have another audacious goal, is by 2030, I will reach 500 million. Like that's now my biggest audacious goal. You got to have bigger and bigger, bigger. And I don't even know where I started to tell you, you answering your question. Can you repeat? That's where I'm like, what am I talking about right now?
I actually want to turn this a little bit because I heard something in what you said, or obviously I heard a lot of things in what you said, are really juicy stuff. I don't know how we're going to pick any clips. It's all so good. But one thing I heard you say is you said, with all these things, I'm behind the eight ball.
Yeah.
And,
that's where I was going with it. Got it. Okay.
But I actually want to say, I think what you're describing is such a freedom that a lot of coaches, speakers, whoever don't have, because they have these understandings that these are the rules. This is how it is. You have to do this for free. You have to pay to play. They've been told that over and over and over. And so they internalize it and like, this is just how it is. And without those rules, quote unquote, right? Without that, okay, what is a webinar? Without that stuff, you have a lot of freedom. And it's like, we know all these tricks to like deprogramming, but that's a lot harder than not having the programming in the first place, right? So I think that's a really juicy and lovely advantage is, hey, I've never heard of this. Hey, I didn't know there was that rule. I didn't know most people don't get paid, just like, what do you mean you're showing up for free? Of course I don't show up for free. That's not something I do, right? Like, just like, it's just so matter of fact for you.
Right. Exactly. Absolutely. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
It was just, yes. And the cool part about it is that, I've been speaking full time for 27 years now. And altogether, like from my time in property management till today, it's been 27 years altogether. And the funny part about that too is last year, 2024, beginning of 2024, was the first time I ever had a CRM system. The first time I ever heard or know how to do affiliates. What is that? Right? I didn't even know what a launch was until last September or something like that, because I'm in a mastermind. And in that mastermind, everybody was, oh, this person has a launch and this person has a launch. And I was kind of feeling very, isolated. I didn't know what was going on, but I couldn't. And I even helped promote somebody's launch without knowing that that's what I was doing. Like, this is exactly what happened. And then after a while, I said, guys, I just don't want you to think I'm stupid, but I do have a question. What is a launch? And everybody was like, either laughed or was shocked, but you can see it on their face. And the reason is that, and I tell you that again, and thank you for pointing that out, is that you're going to be a trailblazer in your own world before you start following someone else. I am not a follower. I'm a trailblazer. I like doing things Orly way. It's like, oh, well, even if a coach says, I'll go do what coach says, but I'll also do more, or I'll figure out something else, or I'll find the fastest and easiest way, or I'll just go and do it first, learn it well, and then change the recipe if I can.
Absolutely love that. With our last few minutes,
yes,
let's jump to our popcorn questions, starting with, what was the biggest mistake you made early on in your business?
Trusting my employees with checks, money. Actually, my employees in 2011 stole $84,000 out of my bank accounts and everything that was in the office. And you know what? It just taught me a lesson. My father, God bless his soul, used to say that I'm very naive. And although I'm a certified behavior analyst and I can read people pretty well, sometimes, you know what? It's a hazard for people who are good at something to not see it in themselves. And so it was a pretty hard blow. Yeah, that would be the biggest mistake, is trusting the employees with so much. I just took everybody as a friend. I never treated my employees as employees. That's why. There's bad people in everything.
Sheesh. So how do you balance like actual trusting them with other things, with not trusting them with the financial piece?
The thing is that I trusted then, and today it will never happen again, because I never trusted again with money or accounts or anything like that. I signed checks blankly while I was going to work. I was doing speaking in New York, and I was doing a bunch of things. And when I was there for 2 weeks, they emptied the office, the bank accounts, everything. They were in cahoots with each other, obviously. It was planned for when I was going to be away. So yeah, well, today's world is easy. I'm mostly online, and my employees are everywhere. It's not in the same office.
Okay, let's move to the next one. What tools, I know you just said you just learned about the CRMs. What tools do you use to run your business?
So Go High Level is a great tool. CRM is great when you know how to use it. I still don't know how to use it, but it's good to have people that know how, and it's good to delegate. So tools for me is delegation. I delegate everything. I do what makes Orly happy. If I'm happy to be on podcasts, if I'm happy to speak, if I'm happy to coach, if whatever makes me happy, that's what I want to be doing. I don't want to be doing all the other minutia stuff. Boring. I don't even do social media.
What is your number one activity that drives the biggest impact in your business?
My webinar, my weekly webinar. I
Your
love
webinar?
it's called Paid Gig Accelerator Masterclass. And I love giving it. The energy I have in it is just super cool. I love sharing stuff about this industry. I love sharing statistics and things that are happening right now. And so people are aware, at least before they become a speaker, and that they don't have this hiccups of what speakers are thinking about, that they can't get paid, that who would pay me for my story, so I just debunk everything. It's pretty cool.
What are some of the most influential books, podcast resources that you mentioned Tony Robbins. I think that's a big one.
No,
You mentioned,
actually, he's not
no.
the biggest one. Because if you say influential, one book that I invite everyone to read is The Game of Life and How to Play It. It's one of the best books you will ever read. You can download it as an audio. And so I'm not an audio person. I need to see. It's by Florence, and it's a 3-letter word. So, I mean, three words of her last name, but it's a very old book. It was written 75 years before the law of attraction and all these things became a thing. So I still tell people, read that book. And I still have comebacks from people telling me how it impacted them. The other books are by Dan Sullivan, which I discovered also just a year ago, but it's monumental for coaches, business owners. The first one is the Who, Not How. The second one is The Gap in the Game. Super important. And the last one is 10x is better than 2x. But it's by the same author, because the way that he explains it and the way you read it, it's so easy to read. I read one book a week, so they were so easy to just get through. But so much knowledge and so much things that you can implement immediately. For me, that's a bigger thing, is to implement what you learn.
So which one should I read first?
The Game of Life and How to Play It. If you're already advanced in your law of attraction and manifestation, then go straight to Who, Not How. Straight. Totally cool. Oh, and I'd love to have a conversation about it too. Love that.
I'll pick it up.
All
I'll pick it
right.
up and read it.
What is your number one piece of advice that you would give for someone who's back at the beginning, they're just getting started? Number one piece of advice for a coach.
The first one is stay in your lane, and you will make mistakes. So give yourself grace. They're not mistakes. They're learning curves. They're just lesson learned. The second one is never give up. Do one thing well. Do what you need to do well, and you'll be recognized for it. And then you can add something to it, but always in the same genre, if you will. And stop wanting to be like others. Stop wanting to be like someone else. It's like keeping up with the Joneses. People spend money on things to impress people that will never appreciate them or anything like that, right? So it's like, I always say, stop spending money on things that other people won't appreciate it. You need to appreciate what you spend money on. Be careful. Be frugal. Act as if you don't have anything when you do have the money.
So juicy. Orly, thank you so much for spending all this time with us. Where can everybody find you?
MeetOrlyAmor.com is my website. I'm on every social media. I am Orly Amor. Literally, you can if you Google me, you'll find me. I'm findable. I can't go off the grid, kind of a thing. It won't happen.